Welcome to the Mass Bay Railroad Enthusiasts Third Thursday program for August 19th. I'm Tom Humphrey. I'm Secretary of Mass Bay RRE. Dave Brown, our president, is on vacation this month. Before we start the program, there are a few announcements to make. First of all, we're pleased that so many members and friends turned out for our picnic at Palmer at the Steaming Tender Restaurant on July 24th. Though there weren't any trains until late afternoon, it was great to see everyone again in person. The August call boy was mailed at the beginning of the month and should have arrived in your mailbox by now. And there will be a separate September issue after all, and we expect it to mail before Labor Day. I don't know what the tone is we're getting there. Okay. For upcoming programs, which we will start at 8 o'clock and will be conducted by Zoom webinar and live stream on Facebook. Next up is on Tuesday, September 7th. It's another members night. If you have a short 10 to 15 minute program of slides or videos that you'd like to share, please send us an email or call Dave Brown at 978-470-2066. It doesn't have to be a fancy production, but there should be some training in it. As for upcoming Third Thursday programs, on September 16th, we're delighted to have John Sacerdoti, show director for the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show, will give us a behind-the-scenes look at what goes on or what goes into preparing the show throughout the year and on the weekend of the show. It's an eye-opener, and we hope you can join us. On Thursday, October 21st, we're holding our first dinner in the depot at the Pearl Street Restaurant in Malden since the start of the pandemic. We're excited to have noted railroad author and photographer Brian Solomon as our special guest, showing a selection of his railroad photos that we're calling Tracking the Light with Brian Solomon. Dinner attendance will be limited to 49 guests to minimize crowding, and dinner reservations will open starting September 1st. We hope to be able to live stream the program, but that has not yet been determined to be feasible. At this point, we're hoping to resume in-person meetings at the Union Church in Waban with our annual meeting on November 16th. But don't worry, meetings will continue to be live streamed on Zoom and Facebook and recorded for later viewing, even when we're going back to in-person meetings. Find the second page of my notes here. Sorry about the delay. Before we get underway, a few things about how our Zoom meetings work. Because this meeting is done in a webinar format, attendees are not seen and cannot speak. If you'd like to share your comments with other attendees, you can open the chat feature using, for most of you, the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question for our presenter, please use the Q&A dialog. Again, the button is at the bottom of your screen. We will read your questions either during Jeff's presentation if they are immediately pertinent, or more likely we'll save them to the end. For technical reasons, this program is not being live streamed on Facebook, but it is being recorded for viewing later on Facebook and on Mass Bay RRE's YouTube channel. Links to those pages are on the meetings page of our website. At the conclusion of tonight's program, we'll stop the recording and invite you, the attendees, to join the main Zoom meeting to say hello or to chat with fellow attendees. If you'd like to be admitted to the group, please use the Zoom raise hand button to let us know, and we'll admit you to the meeting as fast as possible. But unfortunately, it is necessary for me to admit you one at a time. If you want to speak, be sure that your microphone is not muted. And now, for the introduction for tonight's program. Jeff Gabriel has been an RRE member for 20 years. He travels often and explores the railroad history of New England and the Middle Atlantic states, with emphasis on passenger operations, stations, and interlockings. Tonight, Jeff will be demonstrating how to operate major New England railroads of the 1930s virtually, using the Train Dispatcher 3.5 simulation program. Joining our panel tonight is our Vice President, Dick Pralick, who will be helping to monitor the chat and Q&A during Jeff's presentation. So with that, Jeff, it's your program.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
One thing before, Tom,
Yep.
Let everybody know that Jeff has put up on the chat block 2 ways to contact him. So if it's questions that you would like to address directly to him about something you want to do with your stuff, he's put his email address up there so you can contact him directly.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I should start.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for attending. I hope you'll find this program interesting. We're going to jump right into a PowerPoint presentation here, see what's going on. Okay. Okay, operating the railroads of New England of the 1930s virtually. You can enjoy doing this at home yourself. We'll explain that a little more later. A couple of logos you'll probably be familiar with. Presentation by me, August 19th. Thinking about the past, the glory days of New England railroading were perhaps the 20s, 30s, and 40s. All main lines and branches, many with multiple tracks, were still in place, not abandoned. There was significant passenger service on almost all lines. A large number of towns had staff stations, agents, etc., freight stations sometimes, as well as combination or passenger stations. The railroads carried the majority share of passenger and freight traffic, mail and express, milk, everything. There were a large number of interlocking towers in service. That's one of my major interests. Junctions existed everywhere with other branches and other railroads because there were so many still in service. Ways we enjoy remembering and recreating the railroad past, I think most of us do. Model railroading, books, photos, movies, magazines, historical society meetings and programs like this. Riding regular service and fan trips, going out and exploring rail lines by car or otherwise. Virtual operation is another one through personal computers and available programs. That's what we're keying in on tonight. I threw a few pictures in here, sort of like an excuse to put some pictures in. So it's Boston's North and South stations as they used to be. And it's going back a little ways because the L's are still in place, as you see. So how does virtual operation work? You need a laptop or desk computer. You need a computer program installed on it, specifically written to let you operate sections of railroad or railroads. You need one or more specific sections or territories of railroads that you want to operate. These will have trackage, stations, and yards, multiple trains to operate, timetables they will follow, sometimes even scenery. Emphasis can be placed on present day or historic railroads and their operations. Some programs offer operations from the dispatcher's point of view, operating multiple trains at once, different places on the railroad. Other software functions as a simulator where you are the engineer viewing the railroad from the engine and really operating only one train at a time. Which virtual program did I choose? I chose one called Train Dispatcher 3.5, developed by Signal Computer Consultants, based on my interests and preferences. I like to operate multiple trains over large territories. I like to act as dispatcher and tower operator. I like to have passenger trains on almost all the lines, not just freight, with timetables, station stops, and a variety of freight trains. I like the ability to use territories created by others or to build my own, historical or current day, although I really deal only in historical. Specify all the trains, set the stops and timetables through a companion program from the same developer. I've used these programs for about 15 years on various versions of Windows. They do work well on the latest versions of Windows 10 and 7, for example, which I'm using daily, as well as most prior versions. They work well on Windows. However, they don't work on iPads or mobile devices. They may work on Apple computers using software emulating Windows. So what territories have I designed and built? Actually, 40 or more. Most of them are portions of railroads because whole railroads would be impossibly large. My territories are historic, representing what the railroads were like in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Out of 40, here are the 10 that basically cover New England. Boston and Maine north, Boston to Portland via the eastern and western route, East Boston, Marblehead branches, Conway branch, etc. That's one. Boston and Maine west, Fitchburg division, Boston to Troy, with the full central mass, Cheshire branch, Conn River, the full Conn River, at least as far as Woodsville, Lexington branch, Watertown branch, Worcester branch, etc. And this is the territory that we'll be demonstrating today in a little while. The Boston and Maine, New Hampshire and Conn River. This is emphasizing the New Hampshire division, Boston to Woodsville and Berlin. Conn River, Springfield to Woodsville, Woburn and Suncook loops, Claremont and Concord, Pemmican Valley, Wing Road to Mount Washington. So that one goes all the way to Mount Washington Base Station. Boston and Albany, Main Line, Boston to Rensselaer and Selkirk Line, Grand Junction branch, Highlands branch, Ware River branch, North Adams branch, etc. Central Vermont and Rutland in the same territory and their interconnections. Central Vermont, Swanton, St. Albans, White River Junction, New London. Rutland, Ogdensburg, Rouse's Point, Allberg, Burlington, Rutland, North Bennington, Chatham, and Rutland, Bellows Falls. So all the major lines. Here's the rest of them. Maine Central, Portland, Bangor, Vanceboro via the Lower Road and Back Road, the Mountain Division, and several branches in full, and 3 of the narrow gauge, some of them just connections and some of them operated in full. New Haven Railroad in the Boston area, Boston to Providence, Boston to Hyannis and Provincetown, Boston, Reedville, Walpole, and Rentham, Canton Junction, Taunton, New Bedford, and Attleboro, Taunton, Middleborough, branches to Woods Hole, Plymouth, Greenbush, etc. New Haven Central area. This is Bridgeport, New Haven, New London, Derby Junction, Waterbury, Hartford, Putnam, New Haven, Hartford, Springfield, New Haven, Putnam, Worcester, etc. And lastly, on the New Haven, I shouldn't say that. Wait a minute. New Haven, East End, Main Line, Woodlawn to Stamford, South Norwalk, Fairfield, various branches on the East End, and the entire New York, Westchester, and Boston. So that's a 20s and 30s thing for sure. And the last New Haven, I'm sorry, is the shoreline, the entire shoreline with all junctions and connections, but not the branches. Okay, so my territories cover the big 3 regional railroads plus these others. You can try this yourself. In order to let people try this easily, I'm offering to give you members any 2 of the territories free, obviously, along with instructions for obtaining and installing underlying software program. Just just email me at this address, which is the one which is also at the top of your chat window. Okay, I suggest you write this down. And again, it's at the top of the chat window if you want to look there. Okay, what's next in our presentation? A brief introduction to help you understand the program and the territory, a tour of the territory, and a brief operation. And of course, answers to questions you would like to pose tonight. And again, to have a couple pictures, here's a Boston and Maine tower, happens to be Waltham, which really was one of the last to close, and the junction of the Watertown branch going off there. And then New Haven train at SS 149 Brayton Avenue, Providence, just west of the Providence passenger station, as it was in the old days. So how does the train dispatcher program work? You launch it from an icon, you choose the territory you want to operate, like for instance, any of those 10 I just described or something else. You choose the starting day of the week and time. Trains operate 24 hours a day, but you don't have to run it for any longer than you want to. You can stop and resume the same session, or you can exit and start a new session anytime. The schedule usually varies on different days of the week. So for interest and variety, I have a lot of things, for example, freights Some might run Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and others might run Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Or there might be some commuter trains that run weekdays, and there might be some excursions that run on weekends, or fishing trains or something like that. You choose a clock speed with the fast clock, just like in model railroading, and you press start. How does it work? Continued. A territory on the computer screen resembles a large CTC board you might see in a dispatcher's office. You'll notice some trains are already on the territory where they start at your chosen start time, where they are already have reached. You basically don't control the trains by a controller. They simply proceed when you clear the signals and continue until they encounter a stop sign or a signal not cleared, or until they exit. You must line the route desired, i.e. throw the switches, before clearing the signals, so you get it where it's going to go. When you clear a signal, a train passes. Normally, in the simplest explanation, it goes to red, and so no other train can follow it immediately. However, there is a provision for fleeting signals to have multiple clearances to green when the next train is far enough ahead. And I use that mainly on double track, where it would be safe and there's not a routing question. There are many entrances and exits around the territory, and each one functions both as an entrance and exit. Trains appear as engine symbols. The symbol is generally diesels. That's because you can tell what railroad they're of by the paint scheme either. If all of the trains were black steam engines, you wouldn't know when there might be multiple railroads on a territory. The train's name or number is just above the symbol on the diagram. If it's blue, that means the train is moving. If it's red, that means the train is stopped. Using this program, you operate many trains on main and branch lines from their entrance to their exit. Your job is a dispatcher or tower operator, if you like. Some trains may exit multiple times and re-enter. Freight trains do that to work in yards and sometimes to serve large industries. This, however, is not a freight switching program, so you don't have switch lists or couple and uncouple loose cars. However, switching is understood to be taking place at the work areas. To determine where to route a train, you can hover your cursor over the train. All this sounds like Greek right now, but if you wait another 5 or 10 minutes, you will see this happen. When I say hover, you hover your pointer over the train. At the top of screen, it'll show the exit where the train's going and the next work area that the train will serve, and you route it to that area. To determine what trains are stopped and need to start moving, you won't see them at all. You won't see them all at once because the screen is too small to show your whole territory. You have to scroll through it, but you can just search around the territory, see any trains that stop, which have a red indicator above them, and route them to their destination. Or there's a dialog box, a drop down. We'll demonstrate that too. You go to each train indicated stopped awaiting signal, and then it will take you to it automatically and you can start it moving. So this program is very user-friendly as long as you get a couple of tips kind of in the beginning. The program provides a very good readable operating manual too, which can be printed if desired. And if you do something, so to speak, wrong, not possible, usually a message will pop up on the screen telling you what to do, what is possible, and if you click OK, you'll know what to do. Okay, one final nostalgic pause I thought I'd throw in since we're demonstrating Boston and Maine. I could have done New Haven, but I decided on this particular territory. Some Boston and Maine motive power, steam, diesel, and the Mountaineer. Okay, now about the territory that I invented, you might say, that I would like to demonstrate tonight. It's a large, ambitious territory, enjoyable to operate, and no lines abandoned. They're all active as they were in the 20s and 30s. This pretty much represents 1930, and I'll tell you why in a couple minutes. Like model railroads, space and time limitations require some author's license and selective compression. So we don't have the full timetable. We have trains of each type that existed, but not as many as existed at that time. But all major stations and junctions and some more minor ones are depicted. Representative selection of passenger and freight trains, as I said. And on this B&M West territory, some trains of other railroads, such as the Central Vermont, New York Central, Rutland, and D&H, operate on this territory, generally via trackage rights or just crossing at a junction. For example, a New York Central comes to North Adams, and North Adams Station is as you know, the Boston and Maine station was on one side, or I should say the Boston and Maine trains, and the New York Central, Boston, and Albany trains on the other side. So we have both railroads there. That's one example. The Rutland, for example, the Corkscrew branch crosses the Fitchburg, a little west of there, Petersburg Junction. Okay, most trains are represented by a diesel symbol, as I mentioned, because the colors show you what railroad they are. Most passenger platforms are at stations where passenger trains make regular timed stops with a dwell time to board or discharge. A few passenger platforms are for flag stops marked F, and a few represent stations where trains at this point in history no longer stop. They're marked N or NS. At a few stub-end locations on my territory, like Boston, is probably the only and worst example. Trains, instead of changing directions and going back to the yards, continue ahead to a sort of a fictitious passenger yard, because I chose to run a lot of trains on a lot of branches and not be concerned with the passenger switching to back the train into the station. That's really the only reason. I have researched a lot of the history, actually, of Boston and Maine trackage and its changes over time. I like to portray it as it used to be. Here's a few examples. Central Mass operated on its own track, north of and parallel to the Fitchburg line mains, and used its own station at Clematis Brook, Waverly, and Belmont until 1952, when it was rerouted onto the Fitchburg division at Clematis Brook. But I portray it the old way, as it was from about 1927 to 52. It connects at Hill Crossing and onto the Fitchburg. It goes into North Station via the Fitchburg, but it has its own parallel line still. Fitchburg westbound Maine trains stop at the upper platform of a two-level station at Hoosick Falls, bridging over the eastbound Maine. You'll see a picture of this in a minute. Then many of you may be familiar with this, of course, but for those who are not, you'll see a picture and more explanation. From there on west, the westbound Maine is parallel to, but south of the eastbound Maine, looks like wrong way running, all the way to Johnsonville. The Maines are a distance apart in some locations, particularly in Buskirk and East Park, Buskirk, where there were two separate stations and the agent used to drive back and forth between them. This happened because the two Maines were originally built by two separate railroads, Troy and Boston, and the Boston-Hoosick Tunnel and Western, and then they were both acquired by the Fitchburg, which was acquired by the Boston and Maine, of course. They kept that trackage for a long, long time like that. I also portray the Central Mass from Canal Junction to Nowattic as on its own, as it was prior to 1931. At that time, the B&M did an economy move and they got trackage rights to operate over the Central Vermont between those points. So again, the dating of this territory is just about what there was in 1930. Here's the two-level station at Hoosick Falls. The westbound Maine is on top. Westbound train goes from left to right. The eastbound track is on the bottom. The eastbound direction is from in back of us and going under the bridge in front of us. That is to say, Boston is straight ahead. Boston, Maine trains are depicted as follows. I think I'll explain this on the territory instead of here, and the other railroads that happen to be shown with a few trains: Rutland, New York Central, D&H, and Central Vermont. This was the upper corner of my territory, as you saw on the publicity. Now to the territory itself. This is the final slide of PowerPoint, and we're going to switch to a view of the territory. And we're going to operate the territory for a few hours of a Monday morning, starting at 7 a.m. Hope you enjoy our tour and operation. Okay, here is the territory. I just want to see one thing here. Is this okay, Dick and Tom? Can everybody see that?
We were seeing it a moment ago. Now it's gone dark.
Okay, I'll bring it back. Okay now?
Yep.
All right. All right, that looks good. Okay, so here we are, and actually, if you look, I have a pretty large pointer here. If everybody can notice, it's in the center of the sheet, and it's purple and kind of oversized to help you follow it. So if you look up here, it's 6:50 on Monday morning. And we're not going to start yet because I want to take you on a tour of the territory. And I'm going to start in Boston. I'm going to start in Boston over here. And this is North Station. And I am only showing the two Fitchburg division tracks. So one is for departures and one for arrival, oversimplified. And then I mentioned that above that, there are other tracks for the Eastern and Western Main Line, New Hampshire division, and so forth. Okay, and as you go west here, and again, we're skipping just a little at the beginning, we have Tower H, and we're crossing the Boston and Albany to East Boston here, and then an entrance from the freight yard, going west through Cambridge, West Cambridge, going west on the Fitchburg division, and at Hill Crossing, some different things happen. We have the Hill Crossing freight cutoff coming in from the freight yard in Mystic Junction this way. We have the Central Mass going off on its own track that we spoke of before through Belmont, Waverly, and Clematis Brook. And after that, the Central Mass, of course, leaves and isn't as close anymore to the Fitchburg. I'll go west on the Fitchburg basically now. However, at Kendall Green, the Central Mass crosses over on a one-track bridge, the Fitchburg. That bridge is still there now, although obviously it's abandoned. If I click on the end of a line, it will bring me to where the territory goes now, because it's since it's large, it's represented in different places, but you don't need to know where, because if you click there, it'll bring you to the next station, Hastings. All right, so here's the Fitchburg. When we get out here to West Concord, it crosses the New Haven Railroad line from Framingham Center to Lowell. There's trains on that also that you'll see. South Acton, the junction of the Maynard branch. Willows, where the Stony Brook branch comes in. Ayer with its Y, and a junction with the Worcester National in Portland, and also what's now the line to Greenville, basically. And then out to Fitchburg, and there's a Fitchburg Tower and Yard and a junction with another New Haven line. We're going to continue west and click on the end, South Ashburnham. Here we have the junction with the Cheshire branch. And actually the Ashburnham branch, which is still in service. I think that was abandoned around 1935, so it's there. And then Gardner, and we have what some would call the Peterborough branch, and we have Worcester to Peterborough trains running also. Then Athol, Orange, Irving, Miller's Falls, which is a Central Vermont interchange. And then we come to the East Deerfield Yard right here, WX Tower, Cheapside, where the Fitchburg goes under the Conn River, and then up here, the Greenfield Station and Passenger Yard, because the Conn River is going north also. Then we will click on right here. No, actually, we'll do it another way. I have a little gap here in that I don't depict from Greenfield to North Adams. So let me resume in North Adams. All right, here's North Adams, and the Boston and Albany goes under the Fitchburg as it does today, and goes into its own station tracks and yard. All right, going west here, we have Petersburg Junction, Corkscrew Division of the Rutland Crossing, that operates. And then Hoosick Falls, where I mentioned the westbound crosses over, I should say, bridges over the eastbound Maine. And then the lines running parallel to each other. And you'll see, these are the trains that are going to start operating. Some of them, I think there's actually 11. This one is a Troy to Boston passenger train that's already left Troy. So he's eastbound at Buskirk. And then you see the distance between Buskirk and East Buskirk. He's followed by an MEPO, a Mechanicville to Portland freight. This represents Johnsonville. I don't depict the freight line west of here, but I do depict the whole passenger line coming into Troy and Troy Union Station with its towers at each end. Okay. Now, I think what I'm going to do in the interest of time, I'll take you over the Central Mass, but then the other lines will kind of come to as we come to them. So if we were to follow the Central Mass now, west here, and it's single track with passing sidings, as it was, and now we're going to come in here through the towns, and at South Sudbury, the Central Mass crosses the New Haven line. Then we have Ordway, Gleasondale, Hudson. We have some commuter trains terminating in Hudson, but we continue west. We have here a Boston to Northampton newspaper train in the morning. He's going west, he's coming into Berlin, or Berlin, whatever. This was the route after the 1903 relocation is what's depicted here. So they run over the Worcester National in Portland from Clinton Junction, so-called, to Oakdale, and then the Central Mass, it's on its own. The Worcester National in Portland goes obviously to Worcester down that way. Going west, go through the small towns, and we come to Ware, which has a yard and a passing siding. Going on the other side, Belchertown. This, by the way, is an eastbound Northampton to Boston train via the Central Mass, so he'll have to pass that westbound somewhere. We'll see that in a minute. And then coming to NO Tower and into the Northampton Station and Yard. And I guess I really ought to go briefly up the Conn River. So here's Springfield, and this is the passenger station, and these are the Boston and Albany tracks here. But we do have the Diamond Crossing from the New Haven to the Boston and Maine. We have the Boston and Maine's Brightwood Yard. Go up further, we have Mount Tom, we have the power plant spur, we have the Northampton Station we saw a minute ago. We have the Deerfield Loop, which we'll use. We have the Greenfield Station, but this time we're going to go north on the Conn River. We have East Northfield and a junction with the Central Vermont. We have the two lines. The Central Vermont is the southbound, they're twinned. The Boston and Maine operates northbound on the so-called Fort Hill line, their own line. And at Dole Junction, they connect with the Ashuelot branch, which also operates. There's a Brattleboro Yard. Going north, we have the Bellows Falls Yard and the Diamonds onto the Rutland. We have the back track, of course. We have the connection in Charlestown with the Springfield Terminal. We have Claremont Junction with the Claremont and Concord branch, which is a branch now. Pinsley hasn't bought it yet in 1930, I don't believe. Coming in further north, we come to the White River Junction Yard and the White River Passenger Station. And here's the Northern Railroad of New Hampshire coming in. And then the Conn River goes north and comes eventually here to Wells River and Woodsville, and it will go on to Berlin, but that's not depicted on this territory. And then, of course, the line down to Plymouth and Laconia and so forth is here. And then we have the main line north, which is Canadian Pacific at this point. And we have the Barry and Chelsea or Barry and Wells River or whatever it was at the time. Okay, now I think that we've seen something about what the territory is. We can navigate to it, as I said, by various ways. We can scroll like that. You'll see goes up and down. Or we can, as I mentioned before, we can click on an end point where that's not an exit, and it will bring us to the connecting endpoint, so we'll know where the trains go if we want. The other thing I was going to demonstrate, if you up here to trains, the third drop down from the left, you click, you see a list. And right here it says what trains are stopped or starting to move or whatever. But we'll revisit that in a minute when we get some trains started. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the clock, again, 6:50 a.m., and I'm going to leave the time, the time factor 10. This can go up to 40. That would be way too fast to operate, and it can go down to lower numbers, but the trains don't start moving very fast that way. So I like 10 as a general thing here. All right, and we're going to start moving these trains by clicking the start button here. Okay, and we're going to go back to where we were before, which I think was about, let me think for just a minute. Where was I? Oh, yes. Okay. So this one, the passenger train Troy to Boston, and you see it's maroon and black. That represents a Boston and Maine through train. And then it represents a Boston and Maine freight black engine here. And here's one of those signals that's going to clear by itself. As soon as the train gets out of Eagle Bridge, this one will clear and let the freight start moving again. Let's see, he's going to leave at 7, so we got 4 minutes. So, all right, we'll wait. By the way you do this, if you want to throw a switch or a crossover, you just click on one of the yellow boxes, which is a switch. If you want to clear a signal, just click on the red. If you want to change it back to red, you just click on it a second time. Okay, this train left and this signal went to green. Okay, let's find some other trains here and get them running. I see down here a train. This train is a Boston and Maine freight. It's the Ashewheelet branch local. So I'm going to clear him out here. He's going to reverse in the Brattleboro station and go down to Dole Junction. So as soon as he clears that switch, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to line the signal on back of him so he can go down to Dole Junction. Now, when he gets to Dole Junction, he's going to reverse again, and he's going to go down the Ashewheelet branch, and he's going to switch in Winchester. And so I'm going to clear him in and out of Winchester. Whenever they do switching in a location that has a passing siding, the switching or the local work is always done on the passing siding, not on the main. So that's how you know. Now, you might also want to know, how do we know where this train is going? I'm going to hover over the train and it will tell me. But the place that it's going to tell me is up here. So keep your eyes, see where it says 713 MO? Keep your eyes on this little gray box that has nothing in it now. Keep your eyes there. All right, now it filled up. You see what it says? ASHCHE, speed 10. It's going to K1, and it's going to work Hinsdale. So I'm going to now go down to that train. That was because I hovered over it, but you were looking under the time. Now it's going to work Hinsdale, which means it's going to do some work on the main at Hinsdale. And then maybe somewhere else, and then Winchester. All right, this brings us over to two trains that are passing at Keene. Here's one, Bellows Falls newspaper train. He's going to go, let him go to the Bellows Falls station. Here's the Mount Royal. This is off of the Rutland Railroad. It's going to Boston. So I'm going to let him out on the single track Cheshire branch. He's going to go down Troy, Fitzwilliam to Winchendon. Then I have a train going to Nashua, because that's still in service until 1935. Here I have a few historical notes on the thing for my own amusement, perhaps others. So he's going to make his station stop, and then he's going to reverse and go to K2 up here. So while I'm doing this, I'm also going to show you this Bellows Falls newspaper train. If you hovered over him, you'd find he's going to exit D1. Well, naturally, here's D1, the Bellows Falls yard. Now I can clear that signal by going add stat command and click on that dwarf and say, okay. When he gets to Bellows Falls station, this switch will throw by itself and the signal will clear to go in the yard. So stacking is very convenient when you're trying to run a lot of trains. Meantime, as I scroll down to Greenfield, and I see a train. This is a Greenfield to Springfield shuttle, and it's sort of a motor train. That's why it's blue, like a gas electric kind of thing. So we're going to clear him all the way to Springfield. So to do that, we're going to clear him through Northampton. I'm scrolling over. I'm going to scroll. I'm going to let him go down here to a station track in Springfield Station and then into the so-called shuttle yard. Okay, he'll run by himself now. Meantime, our train that we saw a minute ago, the Mount Royal, here he's coming into Winchendon. I'll clear him down the Cheshire branch to South Ashburnham. Actually, I'll go ahead and clear him all the way on to the Fitchburg. Now, this train is the eastbound Northampton to Boston via the Central Mass. So we'll clear him. I'm going to click on the end and see where it goes. I'll clear him a little further. I'm going to clear him to Oakdale. We'll let the meet take place at Oakdale between the westbound and eastbound. So here's the westbound Central Mass train. So we'll clear him right there. Okay, meantime, here is a Greenfield to Boston passenger train. but he's more of a local, so I have a little different symbol. I have him as an RS on here instead of a hood unit. Excuse me, instead of a cab unit. Meantime, the Maynard branch local is ready to come out and go into Boston, so I'll clear him too. But you see, he's going to make a station stop at South Acton. Meantime, the second Hudson train is ready to come out of the yard here on Central Mass. I'll clear him down quite a ways that I can reach right here. Now this guy, I'm going to fleet this signal again because it's usually left clear for the Fitchburg. I'm going to go toward Boston now and see what's going on. Okay, here's the first Hudson local, Waltham Highlands. I'll clear him so he can start getting ready to go into Boston. Meantime, here's a Fitchburg to Boston local. I'll clear him all the way in. I fleeted the rest of the signals so he could get all the way in. Meantime, there's a Watertown branch local coming out of the freight yard. I'm going to set this signal at West Cambridge at stop because I want to cross him over into the east end of the Watertown branch. And I'm going to immediately fleet this again. It's fleeted. I'm going to now clear this guy into the Watertown branch. He'll do all his switching in there and get ready to come out, in a few hours. Meantime, I see this Hudson local is coming along, so I'm going to clear him at Hill Crossing onto the Fitchburg, Maine. All right, the Watertown local is on his branch. Whoops, that was a mistake. And now, okay, there we are. Meantime, I've also got a Lexington branch train. I've got one Bedford local in the morning and one out at night. So I'm going to clear him through Lexington, across at the Fens, and I'll clear him here at West Cambridge in a minute. Meantime, I have the Mount Royal. I'm going to clear him at the Willows. I leave this signal uncleared because some of the trains go to Portland. They have to take the Stony Brook branch. So I look at each train as they're approaching here. Okay, now I'm going to take advantage of that drop-down box, trains, and then I'm going to see what trains are on here. Here's one, EDSP. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to have to do that again faster, I think. Okay, I got one here. BOAME. Where is he going? G5. That means he's a freight westbound. He pulls into the East Deerfield yard. So there he goes. Meantime, EDSP, that's East Deerfield to Springfield via the Deerfield loop. So he's going to come out here and go on the loop. Now, he first switches Northampton. So I'm going to let him go down here. And I'm going to let him switch Northampton. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to switch him into the third track of the Northampton station and then reverse into the Northampton yard, which is north of the passenger station. Meantime, I'm going to normal up these switches at South Deerfield. All right, let's find another train that stopped. I'll click trains. Hudson, one of the Hudson trains, he has to be cleared through Waltham North and there. Meantime, I see a train up here out of the corner of my eye. It's the second Fitchburg to Boston local out of Fitchburg. And I'll clear him through the Willows also. And I normal up the switches and normally, okay. Now here's the Maynard branch train. He's ready to go east here. Right behind him is the Greenfield local. He's ready to go east. The rest of the signals are fleeted from West Cambridge into Boston on those tracks. Here's that Watertown branch freight working at all of the plants and stations on that branch. Here is the Hudson local. So we're going to let him go first. Let me go back and see what else is waiting. Here's the Northampton train, something. All right, both of these trains are waiting now. The Northampton to Boston, the eastbound, and the Boston to Northampton so-called newspaper train. I'm going to clear him all the way to NO Tower because I don't want to stop for each time. Meantime, I'm going to normal up things at South Ashburnham that I see was used. Let's find another train. POME. Okay, he is going to Mechanicville. We'll let him go west on the Fitchburg division. Let's find another train. Sometimes you have to wait for this thing to change. Okay, here's one. The Petersboro local. Now he's going to go up the Gardner branch. So at Barber, he's going to cross over and go that way. Right in back of him, I have a Worcester National and Portland through train. I guess it's supposed to be a mixed train at this time. And he's going to go up to Worcester National and Portland to Oakdale there. And we'll let him go. All right, let's see what other trains might be waiting. Bedford train. Whoops, here's one while we're here. This is a White River Junction to New York through train. He's going to pull into the White River station, and then he's going to reverse, and he's going to go south on the double track. I have it as double track anyway, Conn River. Many of these lines were double track and later reduced to single track, but the major lines are all double track for me here at this point. While I'm in Dole Junction, let me go to Keene and see what going on. Okay, here's the local here. He's already worked Winchester. He's going to work Swansea, and then he's going to go to the Keene Yard. So let me go ahead and line him into the Keene Yard so I don't have to go back there. I see the Troy to Boston passenger train that we dealt with before up there at Hoosick Falls. He's ready to go east. So we'll let him go east. There, he's set. And then we have another train here. This one is, if you look up on the left there, CMWE, which is actually a Central Mass West End freight. So he's going to go into the Northampton station and change ends. I'm going to let him go down to Belchertown and pass that passenger train that's coming in. So we'll let him sit in the passing siding for a minute. There he is. Okay. Do we have another train that says stop waiting signal? Plenty of them. Mount Royal. All right, he's ready to go in to Boston. I'm going to clear the Bedford train first. He's a little late. And while I'm seeing a train here, this is the Northampton to Boston Central Mass. I'm just going to clear him way so he gets going. This one is a Boston to Troy train, so he's just going to go straight west on the Fitchburg. I noticed a New Haven train. This is a Framingham to Lowell train, so I'm going to clear him to go first here before this Northampton train, since he's right there. These other railroads are making more of a cameo appearance since we're basically running the Boston and Maine here, but they do make a cameo appearance. Now that Peterborough train is going to cross the Fitchburg at Gardner, make his station stop at Gardner on the north side, as they did. And he's going to go on to Winchendon. He's going to cross the Cheshire there, make a station stop, and then continue north to Peterborough. But I don't depict it beyond Winchendon. Now that he's clear of the Fitchburg, I'm going to fleet those again, just in time for the Troy eastbound to get through there. All right, what other trains do I have? Okay, the shuttle is going to go back to Greenfield now. So I'm going to clear him northbound like that. Now, here I have a train. This is going to W2. This is a, let me get over just a little bit. This is going to W2. Okay, he's going to Hoosick Junction in Bennington to interchange with the Rutland, basically. So I'm going to clear him along the Maine, which they were on the wrong side, supposedly, and then on to W2. Meantime, in back of that, this is a Delaware and Hudson train. These are the only Delaware and Hudson trains. This is Washington branch freight. So he's going to go up here, and he's going to then take the Washington branch. Now, I see also I have the Troy newspaper train ready to go to Troy and terminate. So let's let him go down here. And then to save time, I'll fleet this. I click here and here. Not fleet, I'm sorry, I stack it. And he goes into the B&M yard, which was geographically north of the Troy Union Station. Okay, and then I can line my Delaware and Hudson train onto the Washington branch. And then I'm going to scroll over here. Okay, let me find a couple more trains. Here is a train from Bellows Falls to Boston originating. We're going to let him out into the passenger station. And he's going to pick up his passengers and change ends, and then he'll start going toward Winchendon and Boston. Here's that White River Junction southbound to New York train here. We're going to clear him through Brattleboro on the so-called Central Vermont, the southbound normal, and clear him through East Northfield. We'll see him again in Greenfield. All right. If I go over here, there's all kinds of action. This is a Green Mountain. This is a Boston and Maine train on the Cheshire branch to Bellows Falls, and then it will become a Rutland train to Rutland and north. I'm going to clear him to South Ashburnham. Fitchburg train is going to go east. Then I got two trains, two freights coming out of the, they come out of the Boston Freight Yard and go up on the New Hampshire division. Then they come over here to the Fens, and they're going to come down this way. The first one is Central Mass East End, so we'll clear him on the Central Mass. The second one is going to Bedford. It's a freight on the Lexington branch. So we'll clear him onto the Lexington branch. His first work is at Lexington. If you hover over him and look in the top there, you'll see he works Lexington. So in order to do that, I'll line him in and out of the Lexington passing side. I see this train, the Troy, Boston to Troy. I'm going to clear him through the Willows. I'm going to look at my list again. Here I have the two trains. East Deerfield to Springfield, that was that local via the Deerfield Loop. We're going to let him go down to Brightwood Yard and terminate. So here he's going into Brightwood Yard. Meantime, I have the Springfield to Greenfield motor shuttle, whatever, coming north. I have this MEPO, Mechanical of Portland. We saw that before. And he stops in East Deerfield, so I'll line him in there. And then I can line the Springfield shuttle into the Greenfield passenger yard, which there's a platform there, so supposedly he can make his station stop there. Meantime, I see at Belchertown, these trains are ready to go. This is the Central Mass Northampton newspaper train. So we'll let him, we'll let him come into Northampton and cross all the way over. And then he's going to go back into the Northampton yard. Let's go back along the Central Mass and find out where that freight's going. Here he's going, but where is he going? 21, and he's going to work where? So if I click here, we're going to come to where, and we see exit 21. So we're going to route him through the passing siding into the where yard, where he's going to switch for a while. Meantime, I happen to notice over here, this is the Worcester, Nashua, and Portland train that came from Worcester that you saw at Barber. He's going to come out, and at Clinton Junction, he's going to follow the Worcester, Nashua, and Portland to Ayer. We'll see him again. Here's the Green Mountain. We're going to let him go through the Willows. And let's trace him to South Ashburnham. Here he goes, Fitchburg. I'm going to click on the end. Oops, I got two trains here already. Portland to Mechanicville, he goes straight to Greenfield first. The Troy train, he goes straight to Greenfield and beyond. And then behind him is going to come that Green Mountain train, which is going to go up the Cheshire branch. So I'm going to line him up the Cheshire branch. I have to wait for the other ones to get out of the way. Okay, meantime, this train is going to go west toward Mechanicville. So we'll just line him straight through Greenfield and we'll see him again. All right, I'm only going to operate for a few more minutes. Let me mention a couple of things here. One of the ways you can navigate around here, I'm going to press home. You're in the upper left corner. One of the ways you can navigate is you can scroll down. You can scroll across like any Windows program. Another way you can navigate is you can click on the end of a line. It will bring you to where it connects to, as we spoke about. Another powerful way is to use the letters of the alphabet, sometimes numbers also. Each letter designates a location. So if you wanted to go quick to Wells River in Woodsville, it's A. You see A, Woodsville, Wells River, just bring you right to it. B is White River Junction. These are a little bit in alphabetical order, but since I'm not depicting a single line of a railroad, but multiple lines, they can't be in absolute order, but each line is in alphabetical order. So C is Claremont Junction, that's appropriate. D is Bellows Falls. E is Brattleboro. F is East Northfield. G is Greenfield. It just happened that it came out to be G. H is Northampton, does have an H in it. I is Springfield, happens to have an I, but that's just a coincidence. Now, J is Bedford for no particular reason. K is Keene. Now we're going to see if there's an L is Winchendon. Okay, that's good. M is Miller's Falls. Now we're going to go M through T, which will bring us to Boston. N is Gardner. O is South Ashburnham. P is Fitchburg and Ayer. See if there's a Q, I'm sorry. Q is West Concord and also South Sudbury. They're right next to each other, as you see. See the blue mark in there. R is Waltham, S is West Cambridge, and T is Boston and Tower H in Cambridge. Okay, there's U is Troy, V is Johnsonville, W is Hoosick Junction, and X is North Adams. I don't believe there's a Y or Z. Okay, there is not. Now, what about 1? You can also use 1 through 10, or 1 through 9, really. 1 is Belchertown. This is the central Mass. 2 is Ware. 3 is Oakdale. 4 is Clinton Junction. 5 is Hudson. 6 is South Sudbury. 7 is Waltham North. Let's see if there's an 8 or a 9. 9 is Worcester, and that's about it. Now, one of the good things about these letters and the way that I use them, and some people do, is, for example, here, F2, this is exit F2. If you see that a train's going to F2 and you want to see where that is, just press F. It'll bring you to F2. In other words, all the exits at if there's an F1 and an F2, they're at F. You remember before we had a freight going to Ware and exit 21. Well, if I press 2, you'll see exit 21 is at Ware. 31, see if there is a 31 first before I talk about it. No, there isn't. Okay. 41 here is Clinton Junction, you see, so that, okay. So again, M1 is at Miller's Falls. So that helps you to know that. All right, I'm going to operate just a couple more trains and then we're going to end and take the questions, okay? So just random ones. We're not really operating very fast here. Here I have a Boston and Albany train that's going over the Grand Junction branch, and he's going to East Boston. So I'm going to set the stop at Tower H. I'm going to run him across, and you see he looks like a New York Central train. That's the beauty of these things here. And when he clears, then I can fleet these again. Here I have another Central Mass train to Northampton, so I'll let that start going. Meantime, I had the one before, since I was demonstrating and not operating very well. I'm going to let this freight pass, westbound freight. His first stop is he's going to work Gleasondale, so we'll let him keep going toward Gleasondale. And meantime, we're also going to let this train pass at, it's going to make this train very late, but again, we're just fiddling here. Here's that Bedford freight. He already worked Lexington. Where is he going next? If I hover, and you see he's red on top, means he's stopped. If I hover over him, he's going to J1, which is the Bedford Yard, so I'll clear him into there. This train you see is blue. Means he's running, but he's going to stop for the station. He changes to red and blue again when he finishes his dwell time, which is only like 20 seconds or something. I'm going to clear him through. I see this train here, and I'm going to run one last train, which is this Worcester Nashua in Portland. Okay, he is going to, he's a mixed train. He's going to make a station stop in Ayer, but on the 3rd track. And then he's going to continue up the Worcester Nashua in Portland that way. Okay, I am going to stop this demo here. I'm going to leave the diagram up because we may need to refer to it in the questions. So the basic idea is, as far as these signals and switches and so forth, if you see a signal and it has, take this one right here, and it has a short stem. That you could consider that a dwarf. It cannot be fleeted. It can be cleared. Whoops, sorry. It can be cleared, but not fleeted. If you see one with a long stem, which you find very often, it can be cleared if you click it once. It can be fleeted if you click it once and then right-click fleet. So that means, again, that if the train goes by and it gets another block down the pike, this will go clear again. So if this is a junction point, you don't want to fleet it. But if it's a lot of trains go in the same direction, you do want to fleet it. Okay. Switches are yellow. The crossovers throw together. If you have a single switch, obviously it throws like that. If you have, let's say that you had a train coming out of Hudson Yard. I'm right here. Right now, I've cleared them. Now I go to throw this switch. I can't do it, and it'll sort of click. See, it'll flash. Why can't I do it? Because I have a signal cleared over the switch. So I can't clear it unless I put that signal back to stop. And then I say, oh, I really want to let a train coming in from the west go first. Okay, well, if I do, I can change my mind. Now, another thing that happens here is if you clear a signal, and maybe I'll turn this back on for just a minute here. Actually, it still is on, so see what's going on here. No, it's still on. Okay. If I clear a signal here and then I change my mind like that, it says there is a train approaching the signal. Are you sure you want to cancel the signal? And then if I click that, it will take 5 minutes on this clock, not 5 real minutes, but 5 mini minutes to clear. And it will flash during that time. That's the idea that if a train was somehow speeding along or ready to pass the signal and couldn't stop, you want it to be able to stop and not do any damage. So you figure in the 5 minutes when the signal's running, they call that running the clock in real railroading, of course. All right, I'm going to press stop again. Okay, Tom, I think we're ready to take any questions that we have at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Let me just check here and see what we've got in the chat so far. Let's see. We have one question. What is the minimum computer specification suggested for this?
I don't know, except obviously Windows has to be running, but surprisingly enough, this does not take very much computer resources, as far as like the memory or processing time. I have not found any situations where I've operated it or any of the people that I've gotten interested in it have never run up against the limit. It's not a hog.
Okay. Somebody requested, could you post the names of the train lines they can choose from?
So the answer to that is yes, but if they send me their email address first, I have a pre-written thing that I'm going to send back to them immediately. And it will have all of the 10 listed.
Okay, and somebody wants to know if there's a way to, if I'm interpreting this correctly, to connect the network of this time that you've got set up to another simulator program like train software?
Not as far as I know, no.
Okay. And somebody wants to know if dispatcher 3.5 can still be bought and what additions or anything else should be bought with it to use it.
Yes. the thing that I'm going to send people is going to be the instructions of how they can buy it, because I don't own it, so I can't sell it. And there's a guy named Tom Levine whose father actually wrote it, and he's in the railroad car tracking business, you might say, software. And they actively sell this. They do not upgrade it. They're not like making program changes, but they actively sell it. I want to be clear about that. It's actually on eBay, and when you order it through eBay, it delivers it, within an hour or two. You get an email of how to download it and all that type of thing. So that'll be on the same sheet that I'm going to send out.
And another question is, somebody asked if it can be set up as some kind of a game where you can score points for making the operation more efficient.
So the answer to that is yes and no. Let me see if I can answer that. That's an interesting question. There isn't any automatic way to do that, but I'm doing something on the screen now. I'm displaying performance data. Okay. Now I ran this thing and I wasn't trying to do it fast because I was demonstrating. But you see this total line at the top of this? What you can do, like if you wanted to compete and two people at their own home were running the thing, right? They would merely kind of like print out or make a note of this at the end of their operation, how many miles they got, and they would want to maximize the miles and minimize the late departures and that type of thing. So only in that sense. It gives you the statistics, but it doesn't do it automatically.
Okay.
By the way, I wanted to, I didn't answer part of your question, the prior question, I think. This guy has this program, which is called Train Dispatcher 3.5, which is great. And it costs $20. It's really like basically nothing. And it works great. Now, this only allows you to operate territories that somebody else has designed. They give you some free ones with it. And obviously, I'm offering to supply some free ones also. And I may be able to make some additional ones available, but we'll start off with the two. Now, the companion program that he also sells is called Track Builder, but that is how you design these things in the first place. You don't run them, you just design them. And then you run them in Train Dispatcher. But I don't advise anybody to try to fiddle with Track Builder until you've run Train Dispatcher yourself for a while and make sure that you like it, because the Track Builder is a little bit more like programming and requires a little more technical aspect to it. So you buy Train Dispatcher 3.5, and if you like it and you want to get deeper into it, I will show you, or you can find it on the same website, how to find a companion program.
Okay, and that's, I think, for now, the questions in the chat, and we have some now in the Q&A. Let's see what we've got here. Somebody wants to know what sources you use to develop these territories accurately.
Okay. Well, first of all, as you notice, there's a lot of artist license or writer's license. What I'm trying to do is to have the main lines junction in the proper place and connect with the lines that they connect with, and so forth and so on. I'm not even trying to show all stations. I'm just trying to show most of the stations, and certainly any stations of any importance and junctions. Now, my main sources of like the lines were that British guys, the steam railroad guy has the Atlas of New England. And then there's what I call the Green Book. I forget the guy's name, the Atlas of the Carpenter, Richard Carpenter, Atlas of the United States Railroads in 1946. And of course, he has all of that and a lines from before that too, that are shown as abandoned then, if they were. Those two plus, Boston and Maine maps or New Haven maps or whatever that the railroad put out. I do go a little bit by the timetables, but again, since I can't run all the trains, I did try. I sometimes use old official guides. I have them from various old years and look up to see what trains, how far they ran and whether they had a section to this city and a section branching off to this city. So that would be another source. But again, there's a lot of license here. I try to position the stations in the right place with relation to towers and junctions and yards. But obviously, there's no way you could show all of the trackage that existed. So it's representative.
Okay, well, right now I don't see any more questions either in the chat or the Q&A. That's actually probably a good sign that you were able to answer people's questions as you gave your presentation, and there weren't a lot of things people had to worry about or wonder about, I should say. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording, and